Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Before we dive into today's discussion, I kindly ask you to take a moment to subscribe and hit the like button to support our content. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you the latest updates and analysis. Now, let's jump into today's headline: 3 Cowboys most responsible for the blowout loss to the Eagles. The Dallas Cowboys entered Sunday's matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles with hopes of bouncing back and building momentum for a late-season push. However, what unfolded on the field was a devastating 41-7 loss that exposed the team's persistent issues with turnovers, defensive lapses, and poor execution. Despite being out of playoff contention and battling injuries, fans and analysts alike expected Dallas to put up a more competitive fight against their division rivals. Instead, it was a painful reminder of the Cowboys' recurring struggles in high-stakes games. While accountability begins at the top with owner Jerry Jones and head coach Mike McCarthy, the spotlight on Sunday's performance also shines brightly on key players who faltered when the team needed them most. McCarthy's questionable game management continues to be a hot topic of discussion, but it's the individual performances that truly compounded the team's woes. Here are the 3 Cowboys who shoulder the most blame for this disheartening loss to the Eagles. 3. Jake Ferguson. Sunday's game encapsulated Jake Ferguson's challenging season, riddled with turnovers and inconsistency. The tight end, who dazzled fans with a Pro Bowl-caliber rookie season, has struggled to replicate that success in his second year. Injuries have played a role, but Ferguson's most glaring issue has been his inability to secure the football. In the first quarter, the Cowboys managed to tie the game at 7-7 after a defensive touchdown and a strong response by the offense. For a brief moment, it seemed as though Dallas might rise to the occasion, but just 2 plays into their next drive, Ferguson fumbled, handing momentum back to Philadelphia. The Eagles capitalized with a field goal, and the Cowboys never recovered. This marked Ferguson's 2nd fumble against the Eagles this season, and his 4th overall, an alarming regression for a player who didn't fumble once in his first 2 years. His turnovers have become a significant liability, particularly in critical games. Momentum swings in the NFL are unforgiving, and Ferguson's mistake was a turning point that shifted the game entirely in Philadelphia's favor. 2. CB Andrew Booth. With injuries decimating the Cowboys' cornerback depth, Andrew Booth found himself thrust into a starting role on Sunday. Unfortunately for Dallas, Booth's performance was a glaring weak point that the Eagles exploited mercilessly. Matched up against Devonta Smith for much of the game, Booth struggled to keep up with the dynamic receiver. Smith torched the Cowboys' secondary with 6 receptions for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, many of which came at Booth's expense. On the Eagles' first offensive touchdown, Smith cleanly beat Booth off the line for a 22-yard score. Later, just before halftime, Smith hauled in a 49-yard pass over Booth, setting up another Eagles touchdown that effectively ended the game at 24-7. Booth's struggles didn't stop there. In the 4th quarter, Smith found the end zone again, this time on a simple slant route that left Booth completely out of position. The game underscored Booth's limitations as a starter and raised serious questions about the Cowboys' cornerback depth. Having traded for Booth earlier this season, Dallas may now need to revisit its defensive strategy in the offseason. 1. QB Cooper Rush. No player had a tougher afternoon than Cooper Rush, who delivered his worst performance of the season at the worst possible time. Tasked with replacing Dak Prescott for much of the year, Rush had shown flashes of competence in previous games, even leading the team to key victories. However, against the Eagles, he reverted to the same mistakes that have plagued his career as a backup quarterback. The game started ominously for Rush. On the Cowboys' opening drive, he threw an interception that C.J. Gardner-Johnson returned for a touchdown, giving Philadelphia an early lead. Rush's struggles continued in the second quarter when he forced a pass into triple coverage, resulting in another interception by Gardner-Johnson. The Eagles capitalized on the turnover, extending their lead before halftime. By the end of the game, Rush had thrown 2 interceptions and failed to generate any meaningful offense. This was his first multi-interception game since facing Cincinnati earlier in the season, and it highlighted the stark difference between Prescott's leadership and Rush's limitations. While fans have praised Rush for stepping up in a challenging situation, Sunday's performance served as a sobering reminder of the gap between a solid backup and a franchise quarterback. Looking ahead. Sunday's blowout loss to the Eagles exposed significant weaknesses in the Cowboys' roster and coaching. While blame is often shared in team sports, the performances of Ferguson, Booth, and Rush stand out as pivotal reasons for the lopsided defeat. As Dallas prepares for the offseason, addressing these recurring issues will be critical to building a more competitive team. For now, the Cowboys are left to reflect on what went wrong in Philadelphia and how they can prevent similar collapses in the future.